Well, welcome to the open meeting portion of this meeting of the Conflicts of Interest Board. And this morning we'll be considering two sets of amendments to our rules. The first involves an amendment to rules 1-01, I, J, and K, and some addition of 101 L and M. Concerning gifts between public servants. Now, this rule has been debated. It's been approved by the Law Department and by the Office of Operations. Its public hearing has been held. We've received comments and considered them, and it has been printed in the city record as is required. So it is before us now for final approval. We approve these rules. They are published once again, and they become they take effect in 30 days after publication. So I don't know if there's any further debate on these rules.
No debate, Jeff.
Yes.
I hope it's not too late. I caught what appears to be one tiny typo. Tell me if this is indeed the final version I'm looking at, but this is 101K number 2, and under 2, the double I. It's about the $10 maximum on gifts to superiors from subordinates, like on birthdays, and it reads now, total value of the gift, and then it says is, does not. It's got those two verbs in there, is and does, and the is seems to be seemingly should be stricken. And I don't if that indeed is on the published version, I don't know what we do to fix it, but it seems like we ought to fix it before it's final.
It hasn't been published yet for the notice of adoption, so we'll fix that up before it goes into the notice.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah, that's just it. Okay. I have just one question on it. We say that the gifts for morale cannot be solicited, and the language by any public servant was added. Presumably that was a comment by the Law Department or the Office of Operations. So we're saying that these gifts cannot be solicited by anybody in the city, even by another agency that is trying to promote morale and the like. It just has to come entirely from the outside. The initiative has to be not related to any city action at all. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure that
it's deliberately every public servant, because the idea being that because these aren't activities where city functions are being performed, the initiative has to be completely from the outside and then subject to the restrictions of who can attend.
Okay, that's good. So have a motion to adopt these rules finally.
So moved.
Anyone opposed? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, it's adopted. It's adopted. And now we move to 8.2 on our agenda. Now this is another rule on the acceptance of gifts. And this is here now. We've not debated this before. Am I correct? This is now here for our consideration, and we can make amendments or not and submit this to Law and Operations for their consideration at this point. So this is at a much earlier stage in consideration. So maybe Chad, maybe you want to summarize what it is we're doing here? Sure.
So at the board's July meeting, there was discussion about proposed amendments to 101C. And in the course of that meeting, the board had a number of ideas about different ways that sort of staff's initial draft could be sort of modified in an attempt to harmonize sort of the different ideas that came out at that meeting. And sort of in additional conversations, staff really ultimately has reached the conclusion that we might not recommend any substantial changes to 101C, in large part because the existing text of the rule does most of what needs to be done. And so in light of that, staff's proposing three types of sort of like more minor cleanup to the first three sections of the gifts rule. The first being updating of formatting and adding line breaks. That the current rules right now are mostly large blocks of text that are a little bit not particularly user-friendly. And then the second thing, to update some of the definitions that are used in the rules. That these would harmonize the use of terms in the rules, shifting to a consistent use of family member rather than an isolated use of relative. And then it would also update the definition of the definition of valuable gift, including forbearances, in light of the fact that a decision not to collect a debt due, it could be just as much of a benefit as an additional gift, and to substitute item of value, which is maybe a more illustrative term for the existing term that concludes the definition of valuable gift, which is thing. And then sort of the final set of revisions would be exceptions largely to the valuable gifts rule. And these are exceptions that are incorporating the decisions the board has reached in its many advisory opinions, incorporating unsolicited discounts, incorporating how public servants might accept a prize in a raffle, provided that they enter and compete in the proper way. And then also to accept gifts of travel related to a job-seeking activity, where somebody's trip to an interview might be compensated by a potential employer, which is something that the board has long advised public servants. So that's sort of the universe of more minor changes that the board is proposed, that the staff is proposing to these three rules.
Okay, do we have a comment? I've got a couple.
I've got a couple, Jeff, but why don't you go ahead?
Well, I'll start with one just on the travel for a job interview. We've said this repeatedly because, I mean, here's somebody we're talking about people doing business with the city of New York, paying for an employee to fly out wherever they're going, which could be a substantial payment. If there was a prospective employer who wanted to take an employee out to dinner in a job interview and the amount is over $50, we would say that violates Chapter 68. So I think it's a bit at odds, I think, in terms of that jurisprudence. If you fly out for an interview, can you also get refreshment? Is it okay to give somebody a dinner in Los Angeles where it wouldn't be in New York? It's been our jurisprudence, but I just wonder whether it demands a little more thought, if anyone else feels that way. The other is on the word forbearance that has been added. Now I know that is modeled on the federal language, but I wonder if we've looked at, is there any experience, any opinions we can look at that define that term as used, because it's extremely broad. It's not the forgiveness, but forbearance, which for many, on many activities, you don't know if somebody is forbearing doing something or not. Forbearing from doing what? From collecting on a debt, from acting against somebody. I don't know. It's a very, very broad and subjective term, and these actions may well be prompted by the other person's business interests or preferences that have nothing to do with the city employee. So I just, before putting that in the language, I'd like to know a little bit more as to what we mean, because it's an extremely broad word and extremely difficult to understand, and to when somebody is forbearing from doing something. It's easy to see when somebody does something, but when you're not doing something, I'm not sure how we deal with that. So now it's in the federal definition, so maybe there is some gloss on that we can obtain. But I'm a little reluctant just to put that word in the language without more. but that's just my comment on that section. I don't know how others feel, but we ought to give it some thought. And as we do so, Wayne, why don't we get your comments out there?
My first one is a completely petty, and it's on that not on the substance of the exception you mentioned, Jeff, the proposed exception about travel. But I learned this from Mark Davies. He had a way of teaching it that I never understood. But I'm a that which fanatic, and I like that there. But if people have given up on that and think that I'm an old guy, then we can just.
Wayne, you're preaching to the choir here.
Okay.
Yeah, if we've got a that which
Okay.
problem, we want to iron that out.
You guys like it too. Well, I feel I'm in good company. Then a more general one, predating the well, where is it? No, it's the gifts from family exception. And I know we struggled with that. I talked about it at a previous meeting. I think it's sensible to take it back to close to the current form. But in my preference is less is more here. And I'd go, I suggest, I throw this over for discussion. Right now, what it says is you can take these from family and what does it say? Close personal friends, customary occasions, that kind of stuff. And then the first condition is that it's the family relationship rather than the business dealings that is the controlling factor, which strikes me as completely sensible. And then it adds these four other things, which add length, but I'm not sure any clarity. The four conditions. This is 101C2, and then I, double I, triple I, and 4. I'm not sure they add anything. I mean, you know, I'm suggesting that if they don't add anything, they're just likely to add confusion. I think they're just redundant to the and maybe not all inclusive. But not clear, and I don't know why it just doesn't end with the clause there about the personal relationship being controlling and not any business dealings, and period. But I throw that up for consideration. Again, a bias like my that which bias toward less being more.
This has long been the rule.
It has been, and I don't know that, and we're proposing some changes to the rule. We're adding some stuff, and here I'm suggesting maybe deleting some stuff. And I'm not wedded to it, but it strikes me that, unfortunately, I think the reality is it's a totality of the circumstances test. You're going to look at it and see how close are these people. How customary is this gift, all that kind of thing, to figure out whether it seems to be the case that you're getting this gift, at a wedding, at whatever, because of the friendship, or because you're the new best friend who happens to be a vendor who never had much of a relationship with you before, and you'd say, well, no, that doesn't pass the test. And I'm not sure that these four things add anything. And as I try to suggest here, if you add a lot more words that don't really add anything, I think they're apt to add only confusion. But I toss it in for consideration, just like your suggestion, Jeff, about the travel. Which I think probably we've advised a few times in the past, at least during my time on staff. But I don't know about more recently, and I don't know about a lot of experience. But it seems like, and again, as the memo points out, you wouldn't be able to interview with those people if you had any matters before you. But you're right that you'd be getting, you get a couple $1,000s worth of travel expenses reimbursed. But otherwise, it'd be kind of tough to job hunt outside of the city. Anyhow, 2 cents there.
And let me just add to that too, a technical, I guess it's a typo essentially at the bottom of page 5. We talk about 2 or more persons, and little double I and little triple I are really the same sentence. I guess it's just numbered improperly. So to persons who the public servant knows or should know are family members of one another, there's a little triple I before family members that shouldn't be there. So they're actually one less clause or whatever it is.
We can get rid of the extra line there.
Yeah, and the number, the
number. We can keep the number in reserve. With respect to your concern about travel, Jeff, go back and see if we can add additional restrictions there. For example, to only allow perhaps for the airfare and the stay rather than any other sort of fringe things, to see if after those are added, it's something that you're more comfortable with. If not, of course, with those additional restrictions, the board can always remove that from the list of exceptions.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question I raised. It's really for the board to consider. I just thought it's a little anomalous to allow for, as Wayne said, it could be a couple of $1,000s of reimbursement, but not a meal for more than $50. And also, once you're there, why not allow for some refreshment? You're going to go there, they might give you a cup of coffee. So I think it's just a little bit doesn't all fit. So that's my concern on that, and also, of course, the forbearance thing that I think needs some more consideration.
Yeah, we can sort of go back and add a few sort of potentially explanatory and restrictive things to the travel. We can come back with, in the board materials for the next meeting, with more information about forbearance and perhaps some clarifying language, sort of forbearance on the collection of a debt that has become due, to more clearly identify what that means, if that's sort of in line with the federal definition. And then
even there, though, I would say that somebody might forbear to collect a debt for a period. For example, if somebody's in office and doesn't have any money, you may want to collect the debt when somebody is back in private practice and able to pay the debt. There are a number of factors that may go into that decision. So I'd be interested to see how the federal government handles that.
We can bring that back. And then I don't know if other board members have issues that they want to raise, but the only outstanding issue right now would be Wayne's proposed edit to C.
Yeah.
If people don't feel strongly about that, I don't either. Again, I like fewer words. If you're just saying the same thing over and over again, I think I worry that the main point gets lost.
I mean, certainly that's language, Wayne, that's had no real interpretive impact. No one asks the board about how any of those factors applied, and certainly the staff had thought those sections were extraneous, but couldn't, chose to a more conservative approach in what it presented to the board. So we agree.
Yeah, listen, but
those sections.
Conservative is not always the worst thing, so maybe we stick with it.
It's been there for quite a while, so taking it out might indicate
radical,
or indicate some change in policy that we don't.
Yeah, that makes sense
to indicate. So, okay, so you'll do a little more work on this, and at some point bring it back to us.
Yeah, Jeff, I just had one comment to piggyback on your forbearance point.
Yeah.
That was the only question I had was on forbearance and whether or not we even need it, and where we could use maybe plain English instead of forbearance, because the concepts that you're talking about, Chad, make sense, but I don't think the average person thinks of that when they see the word forbearance. When I saw it, I was like, to Jeff's point, I did not know what it meant until you explained it. So maybe there's another way to do it, but if not, I'm also happy to hear how they handle it with how the federal government handles it.
Okay. All right, so I think that that concludes the open meeting portion of this meeting, and I declare the meeting closed.